Welcome out today to our food dialogues here in Columbia. I'm Tom Bradley. I host the Wake Up Show on Columbia's 93.9 FM every morning. On behalf of Missouri Farmers Care and the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance, I would like to welcome you out to our Food Dialogues Missouri. Now, the Food Dialogues have been taking place everywhere from New York to Los Angeles to Columbus, Ohio, and today we are at the Reynolds Journalism Institute at the University of Missouri in Columbia, my hometown. Today we have two expert panels on animal welfare and technology use in our food industry. The Food Dialogues have been bringing food producers and food consumers together in a different way. We've been together certainly at the dinner table for a long time by talking honestly about modern food production. We won't always agree on the methods and the issues, but we encourage questions and discussions from all spectrums of agriculture and the food chain. For those in the audience here at the Reynolds Journalism Institute, feel free to step up to the microphones. We have one on my right, one to my left. Remember to push the button at the base of that. You'll see the red light come on, and you know you're good to talk as long as we've recognized you. And we do encourage your engagement and involvement. Please, we'd love that. Also, for those in the audience here locally, let's not stream the program while it is being streamed online. Let's don't stream it right here because of technical issues. For those watching online, welcome. Follow the conversation. You can ask questions on Twitter by following at USFRA and at Mo Farmers Care. Also by using the hashtag food-D. You can also submit questions to the Missouri Farmers Care Facebook page at facebook.com/Mo Farmers Care. So, we would like to introduce our first panel. And this will be about a 90-minute discussion. And I think we're going to have a lot of questions. We already have questions that have been submitted from around the state of Missouri. But we'll have questions right here and others coming in too while we're going through this. Well, let's introduce our panel. Starting at my left, Chris Heins, Higginsville dairy farmer at Heins Dairy Farm. Welcome. Dr. Alan Wessler, veterinarian and vice president of feed operations and animal health for MFA Incorporated. In that big cowboy hat, Mark Mahnken, grass-fed cattle farmer and owner with Missouri Legacy Beef. Chris Chinn, Clarence hog farmer at Chinn Farm. Dr. Don Spiers, professor of environmental physiology and faculty sponsor of the University of Missouri Animal Welfare Club here at the University of Missouri. And Travis Tucker, owner of Blue Restaurant here in Columbia. I had lunch there very recently, as a matter of fact. We'd like to start off with a question, and I think I have one to throw out there. Let's define animal welfare. And I'd like to start with Dr. Spiers. A definition. What is animal welfare?
So the definition of animal welfare is really the best practices that you would use to take care of an animal so that the animal does not have pain, does not have fear, is not afraid of its environment. Basically, it's good stewardship, taking care of those animals and making sure that they are healthy and that they are in a nice environment.
Animal welfare. If I was to ask you, and we may ask everyone on the panel, Chris, Chinn, when you're taking care of the hogs, what is animal welfare?
Well, to us on the farm, animal welfare is making sure that every need of our animal is met. We want to make sure that they're content, that they're comfortable, that they have food, water. If there's something not right with our hogs, we want to be able to call our veterinarian and get his advice and have him come out and help us care for that animal. For our family on Christmas morning, we don't get to just run downstairs and open presents. We go out and take care of the hogs and the cattle first and make sure that all their needs are met. So to our family, that's what animal welfare is, putting our animals' priorities and their needs above our own.
If I turn to Dr. Wessler and said, animal welfare to you, what does that mean? Is it the same thing? Is it different from your perspective?
No, it is the same thing to me. You know, I've been involved with animals all my life, either as a practicing veterinarian or raised on a farm and in my current role. But an animal will give you, and good operators know this, an animal will give you its very best when you give them the very best in care. And I think that good farmers and ranchers understand that concept, and that's the concept they work with.
These dialogues are so important for us all to get together and talk, and I've already heard a couple of things and made some notes, and some other people may be coming up with some some thoughts and some questions on their own too, but I'd like to follow up on a couple of things that have already been said. But I still want to get through the whole panel with this question. Chris Heins, when you're taking care of the dairy farm, animal welfare. What does that mean to you?
You know, we have a motto: if we take care of the cows, then the cows are going to take care of us. And that's my job when I get in every day. I make sure our cows are comfortable, that they're healthy. Comfortable, healthy, clean cows are going to produce high quality milk. So that's what we focus on.
Is then the amount of milk that's being produced, does that tell you that the animal welfare is achieving the results you're looking for?
A sick cow is not going to produce as much milk as a healthy cow. And that's would you agree as a veterinarian?
Not only from a sickness standpoint, but also from a stress standpoint. The more unstressed the life of that animal is, whether it's hogs or dairy or beef or pets, the better the life of that animal. So having a good program that minimizes stress, that uses good management, that affects nutrition and sanitation and parasite control, all those things play a role, and a good manager knows that.
You know,
yeah, go right ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, to sum up, you know, whenever I come in, say at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night just to check on the farm, and I can go into our barns and all the cows are laying down on their clean sand bedding and they're all chewing their cud, and, you know, respiration rates are where they should be. These are all signs of content and healthy cows. That makes me feel good, and that makes me sleep better at night too.
Is it as easy as me knowing when my dog seems to be happy? You know when all your cows are happy?
Well, I think happy is a human emotion. What we look for is that our cows are well taken care of, that they're well fed, and that they're healthy. And so, yeah.
Mark Mahnken, you have grass-fed cattle, and with the production that you have, in fact, I've had a chance recently to enjoy some of the beef from your farm. What does animal welfare mean to you?
To the listeners, I'd like to say that the farmer and the rancher today is the original animal welfare. It's always in his best interest, both from a humane standpoint and also from an economic standpoint, to make sure that the animal is comfortable and performing to its best capability. Farming and ranching is a way of life, and that animal out there is almost the same as part of the family, like you're talking about your dog. So without a doubt, it would be a terrible conflict of interest if we weren't interested in the animal's best welfare.
If I was to turn it in a different direction with Travis Tucker with Blue Restaurant, and being a restaurateur, that's a way of life as well. I know you work many, many hours. Animal welfare, is that even important to you? Does it come up in conversation? Is it in any of your planning for menu making?
It absolutely is. You know, for me, I'm sort of the middleman between the consumer and the producer, or one of them. You know, grocers and other things also fall in that category, but it does. I have to provide what the consumer wants, and it does matter. They ask questions: where is this produced? Is it local? Is it has the animal been taken care of? That's a question that we get quite a lot, and so I think it does matter. Yes, it does matter of the humane treatment of the animals.
Do you think that's different from your point of view because you were raised on a farm?
It could definitely influence that, yes, because I know with my background, I agree with everyone so far on this panel of what they've said, because it is very important on how that animal is taken care of and in order how they will produce. So that definitely would influence my opinion on that. But you know, again, I have to give my consumers what they want, and if that's what they're asking for and that's what they're wanting to know the history of, then that's important to me as well as a business owner.
I'm sure at some point we want to get into something about maybe outside parties or third parties who help make sure to the consumers to give them a reliable method to say what you're looking for is what you're finding here. And we'll talk about that in a minute. On the animal welfare, Dr. Spiers, I think you might have used the word pain. And we have a question that was submitted from, I believe, Andrew from Truman State here in Missouri. Oftentimes it's said that animals do not feel joy and pain in the same way humans do. Therefore, their care that they receive may seem inhumane when in actuality, the animals are indifferent. Do meat-producing animals have feelings? And if so, do our current agricultural practices promote positive emotions in the animals?
So if you're asking, do animals that we work with feel pain? Yes. Definitely they feel pain. We have to anesthetize these animals if we perform surgery on them, so they do feel pain. Okay? Whether it's the same pain that we feel, that's something for someone else to discuss, because I don't think anyone really knows if our pain sensation is the same as their pain sensation. But they do pull back. if they get a pinprick or something like that. And so you know that they definitely feel pain. And so it's absolutely essential when you're raising animals that they are free of pain, that they do not have pain out there. If they do, then you have to find treatment for those animals. You don't want an animal that is obviously drawing back from either the producers or the people that are in that environment. You want those animals to be out there doing well in that environment.
And let me throw this out to anybody on the panel who would like to answer it. There will always be people that believe they're on the side of the animals, and I'm glad that they are. I'm glad they'll always be there. Can you imagine a time, and it's probably happening now, when we're hooking up machines to animals to see what their brain activity, possible emotions are going through at different times during their day? And how will you handle that if it's brought to you as a dairy producer? What if we have someone that decides to hook up dairy cows, hook their brainwave activity up, and find out when they seem to be happiest? How would you handle that?
Well, I think we kind of already know some of those things just by, if we leave a cow out in the rain and in the snow, we can kind of tell that she's not comfortable out there. If we leave her out in 100-degree heat, we know that she's not comfortable out there. Whenever we provide her with good food and a clean bed. So I think we already kind of know some of those things. Maybe we don't have brain waves monitored yet, but.
Mark, you had mentioned, I believe you mentioned good operators. Tell us what is a good operator, and how do we tell good operators from the others?
I think it's a trick question. I'm not for sure. The good operator is a farmer or a rancher that sometimes even puts the animal's welfare above his own comfort level, if we want to talk about feelings. And I guess I could probably tell about as many stories here as any of these fine people. But I know that there's been cold winter days when I had to take and warm up a vaccine in my coat pocket to administer it to the animal. There's been nights that I found a calf out in the cold and wrapped him up in a blanket and put him in the cab of the pickup and warmed him up to save his life. And then my wife and my children brought him up on the porch that night and rubbed him down and raised him on a bottle because his mother couldn't take him. So if you want to talk a little bit about feelings, I think that you'll find that I see some of these fine students out here shaking their heads up and down because they know what I'm talking about. I think the feelings is there in the good operator that has the feeling that he's going to put the animal first and take care of the animal.
Yeah, go right ahead, Alan.
Let me add to that. My experience has been several of these on this panel. Chris mentioned Christmas Day. Many people, when they wake up in the morning, the first thing they do is go take care of the animals before they have breakfast. When there's a snowstorm going on and we're all safe in our homes, a lot of these producers are out there checking on their cattle, particularly at calving time, to make sure that that calf's not being born in a snowbank, or that there's not a health issue, as Chris mentioned, when the heat is just unbearable on these animals in the outside. And that's why operations like Chris and the dairy will put in sprinkler systems and other things which will make the animal much more comfortable. And as a consequence, by the animal being more comfortable, that animal, in Chris's case, will give more milk. Or in the case of reproduction, reproduction is a luxury function. That animal will reproduce well when she's taken care of. And operators know that. So I guess if I were to sum that up in one word, it would be compassion. Good operators have compassion, and they know what they need to do to make that animal comfortable.
Obviously, our panel has, from what I can gather, compassion. Definitely passion for what you do, and you're devoted to this career. It's really a life, isn't it? Let's talk about the health and welfare of the animal when it comes to some of the confined animal feeding operations, all right, these CAFOs out there. Do we leave behind health and well-being and substitute that with these confined spaces and overcrowding? Is that an absolute give and take that's happening here? Chinn?
You know, we used to raise our hogs outside on the dirt lots, and consumers today, and even 20 years ago, decided they wanted a leaner piece of pork. And so to do that, you had to have a hog with less body fat. So the problem came in the wintertime, how do you keep that hog safe and warm? How do you make sure the need of that animal is met? That's why we started building hog barns and we moved our hogs inside. We wanted to meet that need. We wanted to keep them warm in the wintertime and cool in the summertime because a hog cannot sweat. Our hogs have air conditioning in the summer and they have heat in the winter. But by moving them indoors, we're able to actually give them hands-on care multiple times a day, where when they were outside in the pasture on the dirt lots, we couldn't get close enough to those animals to be able to meet their needs like we can today. I think we prevent more problems today by having our hogs indoors than when we had our hogs outside on the dirt lots. We're able to protect them from diseases, from the elements of the weather, predator attacks that also cause injury and disease as well. We actually use less medication on our farm today than we did back when our hogs were outside exposed to the elements of the weather and predators and diseases being tracked by wildlife. So to answer your question, I think you can do it both ways. I think people who do raise their hogs outside on pastures and dirt, I think they're caring for their animals in the right way that works for their farm. But other farmers who have moved their hogs indoors, we're also caring for our animals the right way because it's working for us and our family on our farm as well.
I find that extremely believable and easy to follow. Do you think, if anyone would like to answer, do you think that the rest of the population of the United States is following along that and understanding and gets it? Do you think they are arguing? Are they seeing some other signs that tell them that CAFOs are harmful to these populations of animals? Chris Heins?
We've just had 3 tours at our dairy farm the past 3 days. I just finished, I was running a little late today because we just had one this morning. And sometimes people come in with conceptions of what a dairy farm will look like whenever the cows are kept in barns. And I love getting people out to the farm because they actually get to see how we care for the cows. They get to see the things that we do to make sure that our cows are safe, that they're comfortable, that they're healthy. And it's a tremendous thing. Like for us, I really resonate with what you said, Chris. Whenever, 4 years ago, we grew from a 100 cow dairy to a 600 cow dairy. Our veterinary bill for the 100 cow dairy is now the same as what it is for the 600 cow dairy. So even though the dairy is larger, because we were able to build a new farm where we really focused on animal comfort and health, we were really dramatically able to increase the health of the animals.
Let's talk about the tours a little bit because we are several generations, it appears, in the United States removed from the farm. And so if we go back 50, 60, and 70 years, we start seeing more people at least had, if not a hand in a farm operation, they still had family in the farm and they were there on a regular basis throughout the year. But today, these people have left the farm completely. And I have no idea what goes, I know more about what goes on at Travis's restaurant than I do any of these farms. So these tours that are happening, Chris, that you're giving, how many people were there today?
There were about 50 there today.
50 people.
Yeah, we've had about 3,000 total in the past 4 years.
That's absolutely amazing. People are going out to tour farms. I find that amazing. Is that happening enough? Do we need that to happen more? Mark?
I think we do need it to happen more. Today's consumer is very well educated. The consumer wants to know where their food is coming from, and they have the right to know that. They want to know how the animal's been handled. They want to know the source of the animal. They want to make sure that it's a safe and healthy experience that they're going to have in consuming food, whether it be an animal or whether it's vegetation. The consumer has that right, and it's our responsibility as good producers to do what these people have been doing and participate in that education process to give those people the assurance that they need that their food is local, it's safe, and it's of high quality.
Christian?
You know, on our farm, we don't have a lot of extra help around all the time. And so when you do a farm tour, like Chris talked about, there are jobs that aren't getting done while you're doing that tour. And so it's hard to do those multiple times a week or a year or a month. And so for us on our farm, we decided to do a virtual tour. And so we made a YouTube video that allows people to see inside of our hog barns and outside of our barn. And we talk about animal care and how we operate our farm and how we care for our environment. We feel like this has been a good opportunity for us to reach out to people in more of an urban setting who don't have that opportunity to drive 3 hours one way to get to a farm for a tour. So while we can do the farm tours, it's also good for us to be using social media through Twitter or Facebook or YouTube to also share our farm and our farm stories.
Dr. Don Spiers?
Trying to educate the public on what happens on farms, what happens with animal production is something that we discuss all the time at the university. We actually have classes with our students even in animal science, that most of our students, more than half of them come from urban areas, to try to get them to understand what it is out there, what's the conflict, what's the questions that are out there. We realize that majority of the public doesn't really have a clue what goes on the farms. Having these tours is fantastic to educate them on that sort of thing. Because the problem is that if we don't do that, laws get passed by legislatures who simply themselves do not know what goes on the farm, and they base it purely on feelings of the public without really looking at what really happens, without looking at the science of what's behind these animals and how they're raised.
Travis, when the consumer, because you are, as you said, that middle person on this, when the consumer sees on your menu that it's hormone-free, okay, you put that on your menu on purpose, and you want people to see that and feel good and order that item that you have available to them. What is the feedback to you? Do they know what that means?
No, they don't know what that means. They know only what they've read about it. I do feel like there is a huge disconnect between what the consumer thinks they want and know and what they're really getting. And when they go to the grocery it's becoming more and more prevalent where everything is getting labeled. We're learning where things are coming from and where how the animal is treated. I really think that education is key, and offering these farm tours and showing people what is really happening is imperative. Unfortunately, I think there's a very negative viewpoint sometimes of some of the ways that people produce food. We all have to have food. We all love it or hate it. We all have a favorite something that we eat, regardless of where you stand on whether or not you should have animals or you should be a vegetarian or a vegan. I mean, I deal with people like that every day, and we try to meet those needs. It's a choice that they make. But I do think that education is the key to that, and I love, I know I see some of the FFA students here today, they're being taught those things, and I think that's awesome. I think it should be more into the regular curriculum as well, to educate people that meat and dairy doesn't just come in a box or come on a piece of styrofoam wrapped in plastic. That's something that I really try to enforce at my restaurant when we have new culinary staff that come on board. They've been trained professionally in kitchens from all over the U.S., and they come in and they think that meat comes in a box, and it makes me crazy. That's not true. It doesn't. And they need to understand and respect where that comes from. And so I encourage my staff to go and educate themselves more on that so that they understand it better.
Obviously, ignorance, major problem anywhere in the world at any time on this particular subject matter. Hormone-free, something I really can't tell you exactly what that means. Someone told me earlier today if the animal had been hormone-free, it would have already been dead. It already has hormones within it. So the hormone-free, I guess what you're really saying is we didn't add any additional hormones. I don't even know what that means. So this ignorance level, what are some other key things you guys go, oh, here we go again, with someone bringing up whether it's a CAFO or a hormone-free?
Well, I think labels on our food, while they were intended to help us understand what you were purchasing, I think it's caused a lot of confusion. A lot of people wrongly assume that if you purchase organic, that means it's a healthier product than its counterpart that was not organic. And what's actually true is that the nutritional value of the food is still the same. Organic is just talking about the method of how it was produced. And so while we can purchase hormone-free, unless someone really knows, like you said, what that means, that label might cause more confusion because someone might wrongly assume that product is healthier than a product that doesn't have that label. For instance, I've seen a lot of hormone-free pork in the grocery store, and I always chuckle because as a pork producer, I know that there are no approved hormones by the FDA, so all pork is hormone-free, as is poultry. And so you see a lot of chicken that claims that it's hormone-free, and people will pay up to $1 to $2 more per pound for it when it's all the same. And so while those labels were supposed to be helpful, I think they've caused a lot of confusion.
Mark?
I would tend to differ just a little bit, if I may.
Sure.
terms such as hormone-free or antibiotic-free are a method of branding a product. And in the marketing world, that is critical. I'm not going to go into any moral, ethical statements along that line, not to say that one is right and the other is wrong. How many people here have chosen to eat when your menu offers certified Angus beef, CAB? That's a method of branding. There are some people in this audience that would prefer to eat a hormone-free, antibiotic-free animal. There are some over here that feel they're quite happy to eat the other. So it gives the consumer a choice. That's what branding does. We happen to have a brand that focuses on hormone-free, antibiotic-free, but we also had a 5,000 head feed yard that was a CAFO for 25 years, where we did hormone implants and we used antibiotics. So I look at it, farmers, as producing the product that they produce the best. Both methods are safe. Both methods are acceptable. It's the audience that you want to go to and the target market that you want to work with.
You mentioned that I want to stay with you for a second, Mark. You mentioned that you had a different method of operation, and you changed that. Would you like to tell us why?
No. Of course I will.
It's there's something personal with you involving an allergy. Is that correct?
I think someone's given you some inside information, Tom.
Just a little bit. And because of that, you may have looked for different methods and wound up with a whole different type of ranching. Tell us about that.
In 5 minutes or less, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version, all right? We were a 5,000 head CAFO. This gentleman right here was on our operation many times as a consultant, as a good friend. We worked very closely with MFA, a great co-op to work with. We did what was called custom cattle feeding. And we had cattle that were brought in from all over the country that producers would send cattle in, and we would feed their cattle and finish them out. We were a traditional production operation in every way, and we were good caretakers of our cattle. So we've kind of seen both sides of the fence, so to speak. But we did make a change. We made that change partially kind of tongue-in-cheek because I became allergic to cattle after 25 years, the dander in the cattle. Fortunately, I didn't become allergic to the beef. So, you know, when the doctor diagnosed me as being highly allergic to cattle, horses, dogs, and dust, I said, well, you just will put my wife in there along with. So we had to make a change, and I went on the road and started doing direct marketing of beef. We did develop a specialty line of beef, and it just so happens that that is Missouri Legacy beef. Part of the reason, too, was because there is a considerable amount of concentration going on in the feeding industry today. And within that concentration, it's fairly difficult to really be profitable unless you're a larger producer. So we found a niche, and our niche is Missouri Legacy beef.
Dr. Wessler, you were there in the previous method of operation. Let's pretend Mark isn't sitting next to you. Let's say that I run into you and I say, what's he running down the road down there? How would you report it to me? How would you have, what would you have told me? Is he a good operator?
I think Mark ran what we would call a conventional feedlot at that time. And, you know, one of the beauties about agriculture is the Chinn operation 20 years ago is not the same operation it is today. The Mahnken operation and the Heins operations are different than what they are today. And the reality is through science, through technology, through improved management, all of these operations have gotten better at what they do. They have healthier animals. They produce a better quality of product. And if I could just stretch that a little bit more, you know, one of the topics that Chris talked about was getting people on the farm, whether through electronic means or physical presence. When we realize that less than 2% of the population feeds the other 98%, I think that's really important to us. And I think it's important that we not only just take, if we read something on the internet, or we see something, at an airport, for example, that we don't just take it as fact, that we go out and investigate. Case in point, recently my wife and I were in the Dallas airport. We were hungry, we needed something to eat. We stopped at a chain restaurant. And at the restaurant there was a screen like what you see in the back of the room. They were advocating their product. It all looked very good. And then the screen said, "We don't feed any hormones to our chickens." Oh, really? Did you know that there are no hormones approved for chickens, nor are there any available? What they said was true. Was it a misrepresentation? Absolutely. And if you go on the internet today, you will find in YouTube, there was just a video released here recently, total misrepresentation of what these folks at this table do every day to provide a good quality product for us to eat.
They might as well then have said their chickens are not from outer space.
Right.
To Chris Heins, you're 6th generation dairy farmer. I don't think Grandma and Grandpa ever had anybody come up and go, "What? Your milk isn't hormone free or it isn't organic?" Are you the first generation that's really had to face this?
Yeah, I would say probably so.
In your family?
Yeah, in my family, I don't. If someone, my grandpa is in the nursing home right now, if someone came up and asked him whether his milk was hormone-free or not, he would just look at you strangely. Because, I mean, that wasn't an issue at that point, and that wasn't a discussion had. So, yeah, so I think it's important for the next generation of farmers to educate themselves and to be able to talk intelligently about it.
When you run into people, somebody from high school, or you meet someone you've never met before, do they ask you these questions about, you say you run a dairy farm, they say, "Oh, good, is yours organic?"
Yeah, I actually get that a lot. I have a lot of conversations on Facebook with my friends from high school and college about this sort of thing. And we don't always agree, and it's okay not to agree on everything. The beauty of this nation is that we have the choices. We have the choice to choose organic. We have the choice to choose conventional. And that's what's great. Now, I feel that conventional is best. And I can bring you out to my farm and give you a pretty compelling story why. Now, other folks can do the same. And I'm not trying to drag anyone under the bus, and I hope no one's not doing or trying to do the same for me. But that's one of the big things is friends from high school and college. They have these questions, and they want the conversations.
Again, for our audience here at the Reynolds Journalism Institute, we have microphones on each side of me, and you can step up and flag me down, and we'll have you feel comfortable to ask a question. I want to take a question right now that was submitted to us from Glenda from Independence, Missouri. When will Missouri farmers, maybe not talking about any of us here, actually start to care about the humane treatment of the animals in our state? There are a plethora of inhumane practices going on in this state. Battery cages for egg-laying hens, tail docking of dairy cows, veal crates, gestation crates for pigs. When will the welfare of an animal mean more than money to the farmers of Missouri?
I'd like to try and answer that as a farmer. We do use gestation stalls on our family farm, and when I talk, I think I talk for all the farmers up here, that we put our animals' comfort and their health above our own. We want to make sure that animal is cared for 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We went to gestation stalls under the advice of our veterinarian because he saw that as a way to protect that animal and make sure that they were safe. Pregnant sows can be very aggressive. Think about having 100 pregnant women in a room all at one time. You're going to have a fight. And the same is true with our sows when they're pregnant. They can get aggressive if they feel threatened, if they don't want to share the food, they will do that. When we had our sows in a group setting, we couldn't control how much feed each of the animals got. And so the most dominant animal would overeat, which resulted in pigs that were too big to pass through the birth canal. The sows that didn't get enough to eat, they had small, unthrifty pigs. So by moving them in independent pens, we were able to give them hands-on care. We could control how much feed they got and water. And if a sow didn't eat, we knew it right away. We could call the veterinarian, get him in there, prevent problems from happening. When they're in a group housing system, it might take 2 or 3 days before you can tell which animal is not eating. And that's through the physical appearance that they're gant, and you can tell they're off feed. Sometimes at that point, it's too late to help that animal. The problem is already there. So when a veterinarian recommends us to change our production practices, we listen to him because we know that he's the expert. He went to school for this. He has devoted his life to his patient, which is my hog. And so our veterinarian, under his recommendation, told us that we needed to move to the gestation stall system to protect our hogs and to keep them safe. Every practice that a farmer uses on their farm, they do it for a reason. And on our farm, since we are mainly livestock, we listen to our nutritionist and our veterinarian. They're like members of our family. They've been with us for 20 years or better, and we're on a first-name basis with them, and we can call them night or day to get help. And so these are the people that are helping farmers and ranchers out here in Missouri make the decisions on their farms and how to care for these animals and make sure they're safe and healthy.
I would just add to that, again, going back over a few years, when I was on the farm and being raised, we had some group pens and group settings, and everything that Chris said is spot on. In addition to the fighting is a tremendous amount of injuries the animals inflict on one another in those kind of settings. And there are some settings where the gestation crates actually allow for the young piglets to get some breathing space away from their mom so that the mother doesn't lay on them and suffocate them. And I don't think folks are cognizant that some of those issues, which are designed to make sure that that piglet has a fighting chance to survive and to minimize those injuries to the adult animals, is a part of that discussion.
To me, to make a statement that farmers don't care is a pretty blunt statement. And when they use things like the housing of poultry, for example, what we do as scientists, we try to look at the evidence for stress in these animals using those techniques or using some other techniques like free ranging and that sort of thing. And the fact of the matter is that the evidence is very controversial. You can find situations where there is no change in the gestation stalls, where there's no change in stress hormones. It's absolutely fine, and the animals are healthier. Others will point to other situations where maybe they think that it's not as good. And so the evidence is not clear at this point, one way or another, that this is a better treatment than some other treatment. We're always, though, trying to look at other ways of modifying this, of making maybe some improvements in this. That's what's happened, as you talked about, over the years. You have made improvements over time. And so that's the point, is that you're always trying to adapt to improve on the situation. Nothing is perfect. And so every little bit that we change has some advantage, some improvement in the overall health, productivity, welfare of the animals.
Mark?
The consumer votes with his or her dollar. And to the lady that submitted this well-placed question, I commend her because she has an interest. And that's so much better than complacency. I would encourage her to continue to have an interest, continue to become educated about that interest, and to vote with her dollar. So if she wants to eat free-range chickens or free-range cows or free-range cookies, for that matter, go for it.
I get free-range cookies. You go to the range in your kitchen and you get the cookies free. Speaking of the consumer, Travis, I want to bring a question that was submitted concerning open range, open air, free range anything. Tell me what it is you think your customers at your restaurant believe that is. Free range, what is that?
You know, honestly, and this is my opinion from what our customers think when they ask, is this free range? Is this animal happy? I agree with what he said earlier. You know, I don't know that animals are necessarily happy. I mean, you can tell if they're comfortable and they're taken care of. I think that as far as what they believe free range is what they see when they watch, and this is true to me. If you watch Charlotte's Web, where there's the barn, and there's 3 chickens, and there's 2 sheep, and there's 1 horse and 1 cow, and they all are living happily together. That's what I feel like they have in their head when they say, is this what this is? You know, I feel like that it's a storybook because, as you said earlier, you know, so many of the people now are so disconnected from farms and farming, they don't really know, as I mentioned earlier, where their food is coming from. And so I think that's what they have in their head, and I'm saying that to make a point, but I really believe that, you know. And there are people who are more educated about it, but I think in general that's what they think that this animal is coming from. What they don't realize is that if that were the way every farm was, obviously we couldn't buy the food we need to sell it at the restaurant because there wouldn't be enough, and everyone in this room wouldn't have all they needed to eat. So there's two sides of it. You know, again, for me, I listen to the consumer, and if everybody who walks through the doors of my restaurant or that we take care of with a catering event says, I want free-range chickens, like Mark said, they vote with their dollar, and then, well, I'm going to go find them free-range chickens, and that's what we're going to sell to them, you know. So that's my opinion on that.
There was also a rat and a spider in that barn, too, out there.
That's right. That's right.
Well, then the question that was submitted out of Jeff City was Jerry, who said, are animals raised in open-air lots really healthier than animals raised in confinement buildings? Obviously, Travis, you're saying that there are consumers out there that want to know. I don't even know what we're thinking when we say open range. Is it a lot that gives them air and sunshine, or are they picturing hill and dale? I'm not. What do you think the consumer is picturing there?
You know, I don't think that they know. I think that they're picturing hill and dale, as you said. I mean, I think they're picturing, you know, a farm with open land and then a very small amount of animals on it. Can they be produced that way? Absolutely, you know. But again, for me, I listen to what my consumer wants, and then that's what I go shop for, you know. And so that I really believe that is what the consumer sees. You can see that if you go to any grocery store aisle and you look at how things are marketed. That's what they show you. They show you the red barn, they show you the silo, and they show you the sunshine, because that's how this wheat was grown, or that's how this, you know, this animal was produced. So we have been taught as a culture, I think, to really think that all of the food that we consume is raised in that fashion, and if it isn't, therefore it's bad. And I just, you know, I don't agree with that. So,
do you think, Chris Heins, do you think I can tell the difference between two different types of milk if they come from two different complete operations and methods of operation at two different dairy farms?
Not necessarily. Now, between certain breeds of cows, you can tell the difference between their milk. So, so milk from, say, Jersey dairy cows may taste different than milk from Holstein dairy cows. But if you, the difference between organic and non-organic, or hormone-free or conventional, I don't believe you can tell the difference. And I don't think that, I think one thing consumers believe that if it has the organic label, then that means the animals were better taken care of. And I would argue the point that you have good and bad organic farmers just like you have good and bad conventional farmers, is that label does not necessarily just magically make that food good. What matters is the farmer behind the food. I don't know, would you all agree with that?
I wasn't raised on a farm. I think obviously anyone who meets me knows that that's the case. Although you do not look like a pig farmer. It's the best looking pig farm I've ever seen in my life. Let me say, I don't know what it means to raise cattle, Mark. And so when I drive down the highways in Missouri, I see cows in pastures. They look like free range cattle to me. Life is good for them. That's all over the place. So tell me what happens. They get to a certain point, and they are then sent off to a feedlot where they're fattened up. And during that time, there's a crowding, and there's more of them in a small space. Is that what happens here?
Yeah, you know, when you drive down the highway like that, I don't know if you ever looked in your rearview mirror or not, but after you've gone by, the cows all get up and they lean on the fence and they're smoking cigarettes, right?
Yes, they are.
And they go, ha, 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 ha. There's a lot of different ways to produce beef. I can't speak to milk or pork. The average consumption of beef in this country has dropped down some over the years, but yet still it's very high. There's not enough land mass in this country to produce all free-range beef. It just simply could not happen. So beef has to be mass-produced. It has to be managed in a way. Temple Grandey is one of the most well-known handling experts of beef in the world, and she speaks avidly about how to handle beef in these type of situations. Her design systems for handling beef are safe and humane. So the mass production of beef in feeding facilities that may today feed 100,000 head is safe, economically sound, and a good way to produce beef. It's the only way that we could feed America the way we do, the mass amount of beef that we feed.
This may be asking a different question, going in a different direction, which I think there are a lot of people that say we are eating too much beef. That's one of the problems, and we need to eat less. But you just said something that contradicted something I read 3 hours ago online, and telling me that the amount of the consumption per capita in the United States of beef has gone up in the last 20 years. Has it gone up or gone down? I did have a pretty good-sized burger at lunch today, so I'll be honest with you.
Let me tell you that the beef herd today in this country is the lowest it's been in 60 years, all right? We have been able, through science and technology, to raise more beef because animals are healthier, nutrition is better, sanitation is better, vaccination and animal health control programs are better, and so the animals that are left are able to put on more pounds of quality beef to feed. The consumption of beef, unfortunately, is going down. It is trending down, and part of that is in where the populace today, the folks that buy stuff for their families, whether they're vegetarians or poultry or pork, there's been a challenge. Beef is a more expensive protein than pork or poultry today. The interesting thing to me was there was just a survey released out of Oklahoma State. Jason Lusk, who also writes the Food Police book, made a discovery that even with prices being what they are today, consumers plan to buy more protein in the form of beef and pork and poultry.
Chris, I didn't want to interrupt you. I think you might have wanted to step in earlier when Mark was speaking.
Yeah, I grew up a dairy farmer never knowing anything about beef, and so I had misconceptions about beef as well. And just one thing I was going to ask if I'm correct in my, so all those, that 100,000 head out on the feedlot, those were all born out at pasture, and as calves they were out on pasture, right?
Yes.
Okay, it was just, even me as a dairy farmer, I mean, I'm out on the farm, my uncle has beef cows, and so, but still, I saw this conception that beef cows, they're just tossed in a lot from birth, and then they're raised there. But in reality, Missouri is what, the #2 cow-calf state, #3, and so, and that's a whole long story what that actually means, and you can explain it better than I can. But basically, there's a lot of cattle in the United States that are born here in Missouri and raised on Missouri pastures, and then they get finished out for the last 6 months of their life in a feedlot like what was being talked about.
And that happens at 18 months to 2 years of age, is that correct?
It can vary some. I mean, there can be, from one extreme, early weaning, to a later weaning. Also, there's stocker operations in this state. Missouri is third. The average cow size herd in Missouri is about 35 head. The mass amount of cattle that's produced, almost 90% of the cattle are produced from farm families. You know, exactly what you're saying, Chris, I agree with it 100%. And unfortunately, though, a large percent of those cattle are sent out of our state, so we don't get to keep the commerce here. The opportunity for the consumer to understand more about that is there. I think Farmer Care, Missouri Farmer Cares has a lot of good data out there. The Missouri Cattlemen's Association has a lot of good data out there that you can help you understand more about that type of thing.
If you guys don't mind, I'd like to stay on the cattle for a moment because a question came in from Scott here in Missouri. I understand that the drought last year caused many ranchers to cull their herds as it was too expensive to feed the livestock. As a result, the price of, well, and this is really just about of all meat, has gone up. When can we expect those prices to drop? Are you at all ever expecting the prices to drop?
The question is correct in that a lot of animals, because of the drought and lack of pasture, forage resources, high-cost feed, farmers were forced to liquidate their herd in order to have enough forage and hopefully water to keep the base of the herd intact. In the form of cattle, from the time that a calf is born until she raises a calf that is ready to market, we're talking almost 3 years, 2 and 3 years. So that is not a quick turnaround time. Chris can do a little better on her swine operation because the life cycle of the pig is less time, takes less time. People who raise poultry, it takes less time yet. But beef, the supply is going to be limited here for a period of time until farmers and ranchers can build their herds back once again, and that's probably going to take 3, maybe 4 years to get that where it needs to be. In the meantime, there will be less beef available.
What about the other meats, Chris? What about with pork?
Well, you know, it takes about 6 months to get a small pig to market size. And so like Alan said, it's a lot quicker turnaround time. Due to the high feed costs that we experienced because of the drought, there were some farmers who cut back. And so for a pig, it won't take as long to see more pork come into that market. But you know, the drought did have a huge impact on all livestock farms as well as row crop farms too.
Let me move off in another direction. Dr. Don Spiers, you are a faculty sponsor with the Animal Welfare Club here at MU.
Sure.
And I know we have a lot of young people here in the room.
2 of them there.
With us today. What exactly does the Animal Welfare Club do?
Right. It tries to promote animal welfare. It tries to talk to the public and get the message out about what we do in the animal industry as far as how we take care of our animals. The good practices that are out there, the controversy that is out there. We always like to talk about the controversy, the issues that we've been talking about this afternoon. Basically to try to educate the public, I think, is the main goal of the Animal Welfare Club, especially here on campus, trying to work with the students and show them what we do in the animal field.
I think to put this panel together today is fantastic. I think the idea of a food dialogue is really great, but it has to have some level of exchange if it's truly a dialogue. Are you guys learning anything yet today? The panel. Everybody's turning off their microphones very quickly. Well, because I think it's one thing for us to step forward and say, here's what we want to shove out there to the public and make sure they know, even if it's 100% truthful. And that would be called then our 100% truthful push. But if it's the food dialogue, what is it that you'd like to know from the public? What is it that you would like to learn?
You know, I think we've all learned something here today. You know, just listening to Travis talk about what his consumers tell him, what they tell him that he wants. That's the information we need to hear. He knows what the misconceptions are firsthand because they tell him what they think happens. And then since he does have some knowledge from agriculture, he can help correct that myth and help tell the accurate story. And I think that's what we all want to do. We want to hear what people think so that we can show them what we do on our farms so that they can form their own opinions, but we want them to have factual information when they do make that opinion.
Mark?
We sell Missouri Legacy beef at the Columbia Farmers Market. And for 25 years, you know, we sort of loaded our cattle up on trucks and sent them off to the bigger processors, which that's the way we did business then. Today, we find it extremely rewarding to meet the consumer face to face and talk to the individual. And that consumer, you know, not only wants to buy the product, but they ask us questions about the product. And so that's what we find rewarding in food as a relational experience. And that's not to say that traditional farmers don't find the same thing. I know many traditional farmers, as Chris was sharing with me earlier here, they sell their pork to family and other farm families around there. So for me, that's what I want. I want the interaction with the consumer. I want to meet the consumer, and I want to hear what their interests are, and I want to have a food relationship with them.
Where do you think the videos are coming from that get online that show animals being mistreated? Where do those come from?
Probably PETA. That's where we see most of them. When we have classes at MU on animal welfare, we go out there to YouTube and get the videos and show them the videos and say, now pretend that you are just John Q. Public and you don't know anything about animal agriculture, and you look at some of these videos. There's one called Meet Your Meat, for example, that's produced by PETA. That's horrible. if you look at that video and you see how some animals were treated, and there is animal abuse in some cases. That's like in any business. There's going to be people that misuse the system. You look at this and you say, oh my goodness, is this how the industry really is? Not knowing that, no, that's not the way the industry is. And it comes from PETA.
Where do you think they're shooting these videos?
Well, they have hidden cams. They have, most of that are cameras that are hidden that they take onto these farms as workers, possibly as visitors, that they are getting these videos any way they can. And so they take and splice this with that sort of thing and make these sensational videos. I mean, they get a lot of attention. They get people very upset.
I want to come back
Mike, thank you.
something
Yes.
in relation to that. You know, you can have a bad dentist, a bad doctor, a bad lawyer, even bad veterinarians, Chris. But if you have a bad doctor in a hospital, you don't close down the hospital. You get rid of the bad doctor. And we've got some folks that are not the good operators that we talked about earlier. We've got some bad actors, but we're working on those, okay? We're raising the bar. We're raising the standards. And I think there will be, unfortunately, there may be videos pop up. None of us at this table like to see us. And quite frankly, when I've seen some of those videos, they just make me sick to my stomach, because that's not the way I would have treated my animals. That's not the way any of these individuals would treat theirs. But I think we got to remember that that is a minority, and it is the folks like you're seeing here at this table that are raising those animals that are working to make sure that's a minimum situation.
I just wanted to add one thing to that. I was kind of thinking about this as I drove over here today. You know, a lot of us say we see a cat or a puppy and it's really cute. But then you actually adopt the cat and puppy and you have it for yourself. And you get to learn more about that dog or that cat. And you get to know when it's doing this, you know, it's not happy. And when it's doing this, it's very content. And as farmers, we have the same thing with our cows and our pigs and our poultry. And so sometimes I think the conception is out there that, well, you're a farmer, you're a dairy farmer, you don't care whenever those videos come out. And the opposite is actually true, is that the general public may see one side of the video, a horrible side of it, and I see a horrible side of it too, because I know what that cow is going through. Because when I see her ears do this certain thing, I know that that's not a good sign. When her eyes look this certain way, that's not a good sign. When she's holding her legs out from her body, that's not a good sign. So we see it, and it makes us sick to our stomach too.
Interesting. We have a question in the audience.
Well, my name is Tessa Chambers. I'm here representing Missouri FFA, and I know our state officer team has had a lot of discussion in our term so far about increasing advocacy and true awareness of agriculture in our public. That's all we've been talking about this whole panel, but the fact that a lot of us, we're really good at preaching to the choir and talking to ourselves about things and issues and maybe educating each other. We do all learn things, but as our state officer team and with our about 26,000 members in Missouri FFA, what do you think that we truly could do better to really increase the public's awareness?
Great question. Thank you very much. Who would like to tackle that first?
Well, you know, I think it's important that we get into urban areas and talk with people about food, whether it be in a restaurant or a grocery store or your doctor's office. You don't have to set out with the goal of going to advocate. Have a conversation. Ask people if they know where their food comes from. Do they know how that animal's cared for? And as an FFA member, many of you have had hands-on experience with the livestock project. And so you can help talk about how you cared for that animal. And you can set straight a lot of the misconceptions that are out there. It's really easy to talk in a crowd where you're comfortable at, but it's hard to go out of your comfort zone and talk to people who may not like what you do. And I think it's okay. I think you just need to remember that it's okay to disagree. We don't always have to agree on everything, but it's important that we get the real story out there so that people can make informed decisions about how their food is produced.
You know, I think just getting a table and going to your local mall and setting up FFA just sit there to talk to people when they come along, okay? See if anybody will talk to you about this. You'll find that people will have an interest in this sort of thing, what goes on, how you're raising your animals and that sort of thing. These students here on campus are planning to go to Speaker's Circle here on campus this year and just have a table there that they will then talk to students as they come by. Animal welfare club, say, you know, something to do with welfare on it. People will stop by and talk with you about that. And you're right, you have to do this. You have to talk to the people out there that have these other views about how animals are maintained. Otherwise, you get these, you really develop these cartoons or things in your head that simply are not true. The film that we use a lot in our classes is Babe. And we show them Babe, and the students go, ooh and ah, how great that is, the talking pig. And said, so what do you think about this? Is that helping us or hurting us, you know? And usually by the end, the students agree that this maybe isn't the best way to convey agriculture.
I would second what those two speakers said, and in addition, in those kind of environments where people can interact, then you get some of those misconceptions, misperceptions out on the table, and then we have a chance to talk about those and tell them our story. I think part of the problem in agriculture has been we have raised our animals for years. We have done that quietly. We have not bragged about what we've done. We've just gone about being hard-working ranchers and farmers, and we haven't shared our story. We now know we can't get by with that. It's not a matter of getting by. We have to actively tell our story and why we do the things we do.
Mark, you've changed your methods of operation over the years. You have a few grays up there underneath that cowboy hat. Let me ask you, there was a time when all you did was go about your business and just ranch. Well, you're not quite doing that today. There's no ranching here, you're talking. When did that change come about? When did you realize, and I know there's some marketing involved here also with Legacy Beef, and it's part of your business and you're having tremendous success, but when did you stop just being a rancher and become something that you are today?
Oh, I've always talked a lot, Tom. If you don't believe me, ask my wife. You don't really ever stop being a rancher. It's in your blood. My father's father was a rancher. I have 4 sons. 3 of them are off the ranch now. The 4th is biting at the bit, get off the ranch. And by the way, youth, keep up the great job, because you're the future of our agriculture. People will listen to you probably sooner and more intensely than they'll listen to me. When my boys talk to people about the farm and tell the farm stories that are out there and talk about how they learned to work hard at an early age, how they were interviewed, and when they said they came from the farm, they were never turned down a job. It's a legacy, folks, and it's something that we can be proud of, something that we can pass on from one generation to the next. It's actually something that many people envy. And so yes, we like to tell the story. We need to tell it more. We need to share the legacy, and we need to share some great food along the way. The transition, to answer your question now, the transition is one for me that came quite easily, because I've always been someone that wanted to promote beef and promote agriculture. We have the opportunity to serve in Missouri Cattlemen's Association, the Young Farmers Associations. Many of the people here, I know you know what I'm talking about. So we're active, all of the farmers are active in our associations, and we're actively out there even as a traditional farmer in promoting and working together. So to step into the public is somewhat natural for us, and I think you'll see more and more of that is done all the time, especially by the youth. Keep up the good job.
I have a question I'd like to bring up, and I wasn't sure how to get to this, but I wanted to get to it on my own. Someone else has sent this in while we're streaming live. Mike from Montgomery City, who sent in, why is Chipotle attacking agriculture with their animated YouTube videos? I just watched this week The Scarecrow. Raise your hand here in this room. Has anybody else seen that? We have a few hands going up, quite a few. They ruined one of my favorite songs from Willy Wonka. That's still upsetting me, obviously. But it was depressing and scary, and I could talk to someone right now that does not believe what they're hearing from this panel. And they would say, heck yeah, it's depressing and scary. That's our food industry today. Why is Chipotle going out to this extent? How much of this animated scarecrow cartoon piece, about 3.5 minutes long, how much of it is true and accurate, if you can even begin to ask that? Chris, Travis, Dr. Spiers?
You know, I can't answer why Chipotle
Did you see the video?
I have not seen that video. I saw one of their previous videos, and so that kind of told me what that video was going to be like, and I didn't want to increase their viewership, so I did not watch it. And I can't answer why they decided to do that, because I'm not in their heads. You know, I don't know what their method was, but I can tell you what I think my opinion is of it, is I think they were trying to let people know their food was better than their competitor. And I don't know that maybe they intentionally were trying to hurt farmers like Chris and Mark and I, but that's what they've done. Because now people think all farms are bad, but all food comes from farms. And I feed my family the same food that we're raising on our farm for our neighbors, our family, our friends, other people who live in our state. And I can promise you, I love my kids more than anything in this world. And I would never do anything to put them in harm's way. And that means their food supply has to be safe. I'm adamant about that. That's the most important job I'll ever have, is raising my 2 kids and making sure they're well taken care of. So if it's not good enough to feed my kids, I'm not going to give it to anybody else either, because we feed our kids from our farm. That's the message that needs to be on these videos. That is what every farmer and rancher has in their heart. They're producing food for their family, their friends, and their neighbors. I think Chipotle was just trying to make sure they could get business from their competitor by saying they had the best food, but at the same time, they really hurt American agriculture. And so now we've got to step up our game and get my story and Chris's story and Mark's story out there.
When I asked for a show of hands, I'm not sure if I paid attention to the panel. How many on the panel have seen that video, the latest scarecrow? If I could ask you guys, what did you think when you saw that? Do you agree with Chris on that? What other thoughts do you have?
Like Chris, I'd seen the previous video before, and so I really didn't want to increase their viewership either. But I decided before I came here, I probably better watch it because probably it would come up today. Yeah, it bothered me. It's what I would call fear-based marketing. And I'm just not a fan of that. I'm a fan of promoting your own product, but don't throw other people under the bus. I think that the reason it's a cartoon is to be able to create a fanciful world where things don't have to be real, but where we can create certain types of emotions in the people who see it and watch it. And there's some blog posts out there that are really good, talking with some of Chipotle's people about it. And I think that the people from Chipotle may actually admit that not all of it was intended to be factual. It was intended to promote or to say the direction that agriculture is headed, so that there's not this feeling that you don't actually have machines grabbing chickens by their feet and injecting them and they grow 3 times as big as what they were. And as we learned before, there aren't actually hormones used in chickens anywhere. So I'm not sure what was going on with that in the video. But I don't know. I'm rambling now. So,
Dr. Wessler?
To me, it was marketing, and it was also a way to insert some sense of fear about where your food comes from, et cetera. Again, I thought it was misrepresentation. When I watched that, I said, that's not the farmers and ranchers that we work on a day-to-day basis. That's not the way that works. Recently, there was another company called Panera. I eat at Panera. I like Panera. But they put a spot on the internet regarding antibiotics, and farmers were lazy who use antibiotics. From my practice time and also growing up on the farm, farmers are using antibiotics to keep animals from disease, to keep them safe. And to call farmers lazy because they choose to protect the welfare of their animal to fight off disease is a misrepresentation.
I'd like to go to the audience now for a question.
First of all, as a fellow rancher, I'm Anita Vanderwert with 5M, but also a rancher. And on behalf of the ranchers, thank you for being here, obviously. But I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. As we all know, the population is going to reach 9 billion as projected by 2050. We know that will bring on an increasing need to feed the world, an increased need for protein production. How do you think that will impact animal welfare?
That's a great question. Dr. Spiers?
So my light's turning green. Is that a reason?
How about now? Ah, there we go.
Okay, it's good now? Great. That's one of the issues that we're always talking about. You know, most of the world really doesn't, most of the people in the world really do not have enough food. Okay, we're in a luxury environment here. And my personal opinion is that we talk about animal welfare, animal rights, if you would, as well, because we live in a luxury environment. We have the luxury of being able to do this. If you go to Africa or to some of these countries where they are in great need of food, people are dying for lack of food, the animal welfare rights, whatever you want to call it, is not discussed. That doesn't mean that it's not important. Okay, and what I think will happen is that when we try to take food to these other countries, which we will have to do, we will have to, if we want to help the world, we'll have to export our food to these areas. We're going to have to use the things that we've learned in this country and take good care of our animals. Otherwise, it just will not work. But again, this is something that in many of these other countries, this is not an issue in those countries because they're basically just wanting to feed themselves to live.
Dairy farmers, compared with 50 years ago, today we produce over twice the amount of milk with half the cows, and it's from 3 things, and I'll keep it real short, but 3 things: better nutrition, better cow care, and just the slow, gradual, general improvement of the herds. You keep the best animals and you sell the worst animals. Those 3 things have increased that milk production. And I'd say all the same industries have similar statistics like that, and that's how we're going to have to keep improving things, looking at nutrition, looking at health, looking at genetics.
Chris, if you were to ask me out on the street, why are cows producing more milk today? I'd say, I don't know, like hormones or something. Why would I think that?
I think it comes back to a lot of marketing. Not all marketing's bad, but I think that sometimes the market or the perception of the marketing is incorrect, and there's not enough education that goes with that marketing. And so that's why I would say that where the misconceptions come from.
We'll get back to the marketing in a moment if we can. A question? If you push that button on the bottom, please. Thank you.
Thanks very much. It's been kind of a common theme that a lot of the labels that consumers use to make choices when they're buying their meat, like hormone-free or organic or things, don't really mean what they think they mean, or they might be misleading. So my question is, like in a environment where there are bad actors, as you've mentioned, like how is a conscientious consumer supposed to make an informed decision that they are buying a product from animals that have been treated well? Because I think a lot of people think that those, as you pointed out, that those labels are a kind of an indicator of better treatment or something like that.
Thank you.
Well, on our farm, we get audited by the packer that purchases our hogs. So they come out multiple times a year to make sure we are caring for our animals right, because they refuse to buy animals from people who are not. They go through my feed records, they go through our daily check records of making sure we are out there taking care of our animals. So I think that protection is in place, and a lot of people don't know about that. The reason they do this is because their label, their brand is on the line. And so if they're gonna purchase pigs, they wanna make sure that those animals are cared for. They have a set of guidelines that pork producers have to meet if you're gonna be able to sell your product to them. It's called PQA+. And so it talks, it's a program that tells us how to care for our animals, how to care for our environment, and to show that we work very closely with our veterinarian and our nutritionist. So I know that level of protection is there for the consumer on the pork side.
You know, your question is a really good question. To me, it's a question, I can turn it back to you and say, who should do the education? So that the consumer needs to be educated. The question is, who should do this, and how are you going to get this done? This is something we face all the time being at the university. Should we be educating the students to take the message out, or should we be going out and talking with the public to do this? Should we be making more YouTube videos to get those out to the public? I don't have an answer. I don't know. We try to do what little bit we can do to talk to our students, but there has to be a better way, as you noted, of getting this out to the public and getting them to understand what's going on or how to read the labels.
One thing I would add to what Chris said earlier is the pork people have pork quality assurance programs. The beef people also have beef quality assurance programs. And the dairy folks have quality assurance programs as well. And all those things have been put in place so that the product that we have today is a safer product, a more wholesome product than what we had just a few years ago. And continues to improve.
In bringing up unfortunately, a lot of the education, it seems like, comes from some level of marketing, right or wrong. Back to the Chipotle ad. There are opinions and so-called education taking place because of this video that's been put out. Maybe farmers and ranchers like you guys need to put out more animated videos. Saw a commercial also within the last week. I didn't go search for this. This was thrust in front of me on television from McDonald's. It was so good, and I wasn't even sure who was showing this. I had to back it up to see what farm they were talking about. It was a 6th generation apple or fruit producing family out of Michigan. And their apples are being used at McDonald's. And it was a feel-good commercial and showed us that. So I want to turn, Travis, you do a level of marketing and what you do with your restaurant. Plus we're talking about restaurants here, all right? So they're the in-between going from the producers to the consumers. How do you feel about these things?
Well, I think that you need to be as honest as possible, and I know that from a marketing standpoint, you want to. I understand why McDonald's wants to do that, because it got you. You know that, wow, we're supporting a 6th-generation farmer of apples. That's going to appeal to a new market base because McDonald's is trying to clean up their image a little bit instead of marketing to the masses, selling food that we know is cheap and we know that has not been prepared with maybe as much. It's been prepared with care because of the FDA guidelines, but maybe it isn't. There's not as much care put into it. It's more about quick, you know. And so I know that they're changing their image a little bit. For me, when we market, we want people to know that we make all of our food from scratch. We make everything from recipes, and we do care where our food comes from because our consumers care. So to answer your question, when we do marketing, yes, you want to let people know that because we are such a hypersensitive society, I feel like now, that this littlest thing can set somebody off, and they don't educate themselves enough to know where their food is coming from or to know why what is being shown is what is being shown.
Mark?
We live in a highly visible culture. Well, I think we're seeing a lot of that in the media today where we're being watched. And it's a double-edged sword. As farmers, you know, we feel like we're going to do the very best job we can, of course. We can't really change the misinformation. We can only get the positive information out there in events like today. And like Dr. Wessler said, the Beef Association has their quality assurance program. That's an education program. And we've educated our producers, but perhaps it's good we continue to educate the consumer also. I think that you're always going to have the negative marketing out there in some sort or the other, but it's our job now to come to duty and to promote the good aspects also.
Let's take another question from the audience, please.
Yes, we've touched on briefly raising animals indoors as opposed to outdoors, the pros and cons of both. I hope this remains somewhat tangentially related to animal welfare, but many people have concerns about environmental sustainability, water quality issues. Was wondering from Travis, for example, if that's something he hears from his consumers, and then from the producers on the panel, if you could give us an idea of what steps you may take in regards to, say, nutrient management or water discharges. Sorry.
Thank you.
Well, I think from a sustainable standpoint, that's a very good question. That's very important. That is something that we are seeing, and frankly, we're not seeing it with pork and beef right now. What I see with sustainability is seafood. That is where I see it the most, and people are being more conscious of where their seafood is coming from because everyone who knows or eats seafood knows that there are different ways you can get it. It's farm raised, it's wild caught, and those are very different, and that affects the sustainability. And the consumer is more sensitive to that because, you know, it's no secret that our oceans are overfished. But I do know that my consumer, they want fish on the menu. They want to see that as an option because they see that, again, it goes back to marketing, but it is proven that there are health benefits to eating certain types of fish, and it's healthier for you than some other of the options that you may have. So I don't see sustainability questions or concerns coming from beef and pork at this point, at least not from my customers, my consumers, but I do see it a whole lot more on the seafood side, and they are wanting farm raised. Again, and that gets into a whole nother level. We don't have anybody here that's an expert on that today, but I know that that's where I see that most with sustainability.
Well, on our farm, caring for our environment is one of our top priorities because we're the 5th generation of farmers, and I want my children to be able to come back home to the farm and be the 6th. And I want to make sure I can pass that farm on to my children in better shape than what I've got it. Today's pork producer, we are using 41% less water today than we were in 1959. We are using 78% less land today. And so we've made huge improvements in how we care for our animals, and we also care for our environment. We have reduced our carbon footprint by 35%. These are some remarkable things that pork producers have done, but we're not good at bragging on ourselves. And so as a result, people don't know that story. On our farm, we test our manure to see what the nutrient value is, and we test our soil before we apply it to our soil. We actually inject the manure as natural fertilizer into our soil to make sure that we don't have runoff and to make sure that we get to capture all of that natural fertilizer that is there. Now, that isn't something that just my farm does. This is something that all hog farmers do because we want to reuse that natural resource as best as we can. This is something that beef producers and dairy producers do as well. So those are just a few of the things that we are doing to preserve that land for the next generation and care for our environment at the same time.
I would just echo, and Chris mentioned, that also is happening in the beef industry. That's also happening in the dairy industry where they're using less land, less water, they're producing less manure. Part of the reason they're able to do that is the advent of science and technology, which goes back to a question earlier about how we are preparing to provide enough food for a growing world population. It is using all that science and technology together with improving the environment and our carbon footprint at the same time.
First off, I just want to thank Chris and her generation because I'm a 6th generation farmer. It's because the 5th generation took care of the land that I'm able to come and do what I'm doing now. And so it's in my best interest because I want my kids to be able to farm someday. I've been here for 6 generations. You know, I want our family to be able to continue to farm the same land for another 6 generations. We do much the same similar practices as far as manure. You know, we're testing the manure, testing the soil, applying it back as natural fertilizer, making sure there's no runoff. Those are all things that are high priorities for us.
We've mentioned multiple generations. We'll finish up then, especially with the youth that we have in the room here at the Reynolds Journalism Institute, with a question we had submitted to us from Charlotte in St. Peters, Missouri. Lots of farmers are now in their mid-60s, farmers and ranchers. Do you see the younger generation continuing the tradition, owning a farm and acreage? What do you see in the future? Crystal ball.
Right now, one of the biggest challenges for the next generation to come back to that family farm is transitioning. How do you transition that farm from grandma and grandpa down to the grandkids or from mom and dad to the kid? There are a lot of political regulations that prevent people from being able to come back home to the farm. One of those would be the death tax. You know, when a family member dies, that farm is going to be taxed by the government. And so these kids, sometimes younger than Chris, sometimes older than Chris, have to go to the bank and say, hey, can you loan loan me the money to pay off this government death tax. And it's hard to find a lender willing to give you that money because there's inherent risk in farming. You depend on the weather. There's no control over that. So that's one of the biggest obstacles we have into bringing back that next generation is to how do we get some of this regulation to let up on us so that we can bring that next generation home. We're not growing any more land out here today. Land prices continue to increase. And so a down payment for a farm is a lot of money today. You know, it can be over $500,000 sometimes depending on the size of the farm and where that great farmland is. And so these are the challenges that young farmers face. I know there are a lot of retiring generation farmers who are looking to bring that next generation in, and they're trying to help and support them the best they can. But some of these regulations are kind of crippling, and so I see that as the biggest challenge.
One of the fastest growing enterprises or industries in the state of Missouri is a small farm. That's recently came out in statistics. Once again, as a member of the Columbia Farmers Market, we see young people coming to the market that have started small gardens and small enterprises right in their backyard, or they have 4 or 5 acres. We may well be looking at a paradigm shift of a sort here, where young people can get back into farming on that type of a scale and produce food for themselves, maybe for their neighbor, maybe for their community. So localized farming could be something that could be of a great opportunity for all of us if we keep our minds open to it.
Anyone else? Chris?
I guess I'd just say, you know, I recently came back to the farm after college, and for me, a lot of it had to do with my parents gave me autonomy, they gave me respect, they gave me responsibilities when I came back. And that was really a big deal for me. There was no other farm I could go to in the United States and be invested in as our own farm. And my dad gave me a lot of responsibilities on autonomy, and it was a great thing.
That's great to hear.
You know, in the animal science department, we do see fewer and fewer students wanting to go back to the farm. They come from the farm, they want to go back into working for larger companies and that sort of thing. That still doesn't take away from the realization of animal welfare, not only from farm animals, but for animals in zoos, for animals, our pets, and that sort of thing. That's a realization that goes beyond going back to the family farm. But it is a trend that we see, at least at the university, that more and more are going away from the farm, trying to get them to go back. I agree that with niche markets that are rising now, there are the people that are going back and having one job, but then they're doing this sort of on the side. They have a few head of cattle, that sort of thing, some horses or whatever. And again, the more they realize, understand animal welfare, the better the world will be.
I want to thank everyone here today at the Reynolds Journalism Institute for being a part of our first panel this afternoon, and especially our panelists, Chris Heins and Wessler, Dr. Alan Wessler, Mark Mahnken, Chris Chinn, Dr. Don Spiers, and Travis Tucker. Thank you. Big round of applause for these guys, please. Thank you.